Do you think through Adam putting in work to have the earth bear fruit, he, through that experience, learned more about God's creation?
Innumerably. And so it's like playing catch up for all the stuff that he didn't learn in preparation to eating the fruit.
Welcome back to Machinae Ex Deo. Today's episode is about creativity. This whole process that begins in Genesis, and now God has us actually as partakers and continuers of the same creative process. We're exploring today to what extent humans partake in creation, what the aspects of creation are, and a couple rabbit holes, of course, as we usually do. I hope you really enjoy. I found this episode to be really fascinating and eye-opening, and perhaps it's been a little bit too long in the works, but I hope you enjoy today's episode.
I'm Thaddeus. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I have a background in farm equipment, medical device. I built race cars, kind of done a little bit of everything, and now I build manufacturing equipment.
I'm Jackson. I work in cybersecurity in the defense industry and have a very strange resume before that, but that's what I'm doing now.
I am Nathaniel. I have a software development background, and I'm currently working as a research and development test engineer.
I'm Kevin. I studied mechanical engineering in school. I was a machinist for almost a year and a half out of school, and now I'm an oil painter in the Impressionist tradition.
Very cool.
Nice. That's so cool.
Which is perfect for today because we're talking about creativity. So it's going to be interesting to see how you kind of straddle the creative side of the engineering disciplines and technology with the actual, what we typically consider creative in the painting and the what we say is arts, quote unquote.
Right, because we took off the fine arts when everything else became so regulated that I don't know what the term would be for the other arts, but well, most of which we now consider trades.
Oh, I did not know that, actually.
I sometimes like to call myself a practitioner of the mechanical arts.
Yeah.
But so we're actually going to start today with a reading through and meditation on Genesis and a little bit of Exodus. So, Nathaniel, would you like to start reading through Genesis 1 and 2 for us?
Absolutely. Genesis chapter 1, the first story of creation. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless wasteland, and darkness covered the abyss, while a mighty wind swept over the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw how good the light was. God then separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Thus everything came, and morning followed, the first day. Then God said, "Let there be a dome in the middle of the waters, to separate one body of water from the other." And so it happened. God made the dome, and it separated the water above the dome from the water below it. God called the dome the sky. Evening came, and morning followed, the second day. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered into a single basin, so that the dry land may appear." And so it happened. The water under the sky was gathered into its basin, and the dry land appeared. God called the dry land the earth, and the basin of the water he called the sea. God saw how good it was. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seed in it." And so it happened. The earth brought forth every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seed in it. God saw how good it was. Evening came, morning followed, the third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky, to separate day from night. Let them mark the fixed times, the days and the years, and serve as luminaries in the dome of the sky, to shed light upon the earth." And so it happened. God made the two great lights, the greater one to govern the day, and the lesser one to govern the night. And he made the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to shed light upon the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw how good it was. Evening came, and morning followed, the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the water teem with an abundance of living creatures, and on the earth let birds fly beneath the dome of the sky." And so it happened. God created the great sea monsters and all kinds of swimming creatures with which the water teems, and all kinds of winged birds. God saw how good it was, and God blessed them, saying, "Be fertile and multiply, and fill the water of the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." Evening came, and morning followed, the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth all kinds of living creatures, cattle, creeping things, and wild animals of all kinds." And so it happened. God made all kinds of wild animals, all kinds of cattle, and all kinds of creeping things of the earth. God saw how good it was. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the cattle, and over all the world, and over all the wild animals and the creatures that crawl on the ground." God created man in his image. In the divine image he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, saying, "Be fertile and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and all living things that move on the earth." God also said, "See, I give you every seed-bearing plant all over the earth, and every tree that has seed-bearing fruit on it to be your food. And to all the animals of the land, all the birds of the air, and all the living creatures that crawl on the ground, I give all the green plants for food." And so it happened. God looked at everything he had made, and he found it very good. Evening came, and morning followed, the sixth day. Chapter 2. Thus the heavens and the earth and all their array were completed. Since on the seventh day God was finished with the work he had been doing, he rested on the seventh day from all the work he had undertaken. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work he had done in creation. Such is the story of the heavens and the earth at their creation. At the time when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, while as yet there was no field shrub on earth and no grass of the field had sprouted, the Lord God had sent no rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the soil. But a stream was welling up out of the earth and was watering all the surface of the ground. The Lord God formed man out of the clay of the ground and blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and so man became a living being. Then the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and he placed there a man who he had formed. Out of the ground the Lord God made various trees grow that were delightful to look at and good for food, with the tree of life in the middle of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and bad. A river rises in Eden to water the garden. Beyond there it divides and becomes 4 branches. The name of the first is Pishon. It is the one that winds through the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is excellent. Bdellium and lapis lazuli are also there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one that winds all through the land of Cush. The name of the third river is the Tigris. It is the one that flows east of Ashur. The fourth river is the Euphrates. The Lord God then took the man and settled him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it. The Lord God gave man this order: "You are free to eat from any of the trees of the garden, except the tree of knowledge of good and bad. From that tree you shall not eat. The moment you eat from it, you are surely doomed to die." The Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a suitable partner for him." So the Lord God formed out of the ground various wild animals and various birds of the air. And he brought them to the man to see what he would call them. Whatever the man called each of them would be its name. The man gave names to all the cattle, all the birds of the air, and all the wild animals, but none proved to be the suitable partner for the man. So the Lord God cast a deep sleep on the man, and while he was asleep, he took out of one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. The Lord God then built up into a woman the rib that he had taken from the man. When he brought her to the man said, "This one at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of her man this one had been taken." That is why a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, and the two of them become one body. The man and his wife were both naked, yet they felt no shame.
Honestly, the first thing that stood out to me is that even though God is omnipotent, there's a sense of exertion in the chapter 1 from all the work that God does creating heavens and earth.
That's a really good point.
Because otherwise, why is rest so important?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And yeah, infinite power because it's God, but still.
One of the things that did strike me on the same vein is, so we kind of associate work with a post-fall thing.
True, yeah.
And this is where I wish I had another language translation in front of me, but I do not. So I'm just going to go with the fact that man was put in the garden to work it and take care of it.
Tend the garden.
Yeah. So like work and labor precedes the fall. It's not something that comes out of the fall.
Agreed. Yeah.
It changes nature after the fall, which is getting ahead of things a little bit. But it definitely exists before.
The part that stood out to me was actually on the comment in the show notes where man is participating in being creative. The first instance of that, I feel, is when Adam names the animals. Is like one of the first instances of that.
Yeah. So when you name something, you put a box around it. You're bounding where it is. And that's also very interesting because it mirrors the exact pattern that we have where God creates, God makes, and then immediately kind of separates.
Are the things being boxed because of the name? Or is Adam seeing the forms that God created and selecting the correct names for them?
That's a good question.
The thing that I wanted to drive home was the whole if we use the naming of the animals as like the first quote unquote instance of man being creative, the way that it's presented is that God has created all of these things, but he is allowing man to participate in that creation as opposed to like man creating something for himself, so to speak. It's like a participatory, symbiotic relationship almost immediately off the bat.
It's participatory but not independent.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like an indication of our first sort of senses towards creativity, because I think in order to categorize, you have to differentiate between things.
Yep.
And that in itself is creativity.
True.
Yeah. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering above the waters. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He saw that that light was good, and then immediately he separated it from the darkness.
Huh.
And then immediately after separating the light from the darkness, he called the light day, and the darkness he called night.
Separation and then naming.
So there's kind
creation,
of a pattern.
Separation, naming.
Well, yeah, creation, separation, naming.
Creation, bounding, naming.
Yeah, bounding is a good word too.
The other thing that you just reminded me, Jackson, is it's the fact that he makes the thing and then he sees that it is good. It's almost like the creative process is you're supposed to be able to take a step back, evaluate what has been made, and then determine that this is good, or like,
or not,
or not,
potentially,
right?
Because
hence the creative process of making constant tweaks to
fallen
make it.
creatures, etc.
Is that the role of beauty?
That's interesting. Say a little bit more.
Well, I'm struck that he saw that it was good. Whatever that means.
Okay. So I'm
see.
immediately drawn to an iterative design process, and this is when I'm designing machines. This is kind of what I do. You go down a path that you think might be profitable. You think it might be the right thing to do. You don't really know yet until you actually kind of see the design out a little bit, so you can actually flesh it out, and then you start to realize, okay, this has its merits, or this is completely terrible. And this is often this is the struggle with why very regimented organizations fail to ever produce anything of value, is because you think that design is linear when in fact it's actually iterative, because you can only assess whether or not a thing is good after you've built it. And as far as beauty is concerned, I'm drawn to a quote by a fairly notable, and I'm not remembering who it was. All the great quotes in engineering seem to be from aeronautical engineers of, when I'm designing a thing, I do not think of beauty, but when it is done and it is not beautiful, I know that it is incorrect.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
And I feel like that, in a way, is actually very much corroborated here, where we have this pattern of create substance, segregate it out, separate it out, and actually make it black and white. Almost the separative process is you're separating all the wheat from the chaff and refining what is this vague material idea that I have and purifying it to its purest and best form. Hence the black and white. Hence why it's light and dark. You have the most pure in each element, and seeing then, testing, is this good or not?
Okay. Sorry. I going off of what you said that. So I remember a couple episodes back we were talking about, this might have been one of the first episodes we had, where we talked about, kind of touched on like musicians and artists having like muses, or they have this idea and it's iterative in that they keep tweaking, changing, tipping away at this idea until it reaches what it should be or what it should be. My thought is, if we think of man as participatory in God's creation, it's almost like God knows what the thing should be, and the more aligned we are to his will, the more we can chip away at what we're working on until we reach what he is seen. We eventually reach the point at which it is a thing that he wants to be made or assigned a nature to. Does that kind of make sense? Where like God knows the thing because we're participating in his creation, and us going through like this iterative process is like trying to weed out all the examples that aren't what God is looking for.
It's a process of coming to know God.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Through the creative process.
Interesting. But when we say creative, it is more those second two steps of the 3-step creation that we're proposing here.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, which is fine. And I think actually kind of recognizes that, our role is participatory and not independent. We still depend on God for the material cause of things.
Right.
But what we do, because we do not create ex nihilo. We create from mines and forests and rivers.
Right.
We extract that which already has been created.
We can make, we cannot create. If that makes sense. So like make as in like you can take
We can reassemble.
Yes, exactly.
Reconfigure.
Create, and when I'm saying create here, I mean in the context of make something out of nothing. That's reserved for God can do that. We can't really do that. obviously, but I'm thinking of the word make here as taking what already exists and then, like you're saying, assembling it into a new form or deriving a new form from it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Just to add to this discussion, this is exactly what Pope John Paul II talks about in his letter to artists. And what I like is he distinguishes artists. Well, I shouldn't say that. He uses the word craftsman to talk about like artists just for that purpose. That artists don't create out of nothing, but they craft what's already present. So that reassembling that you're talking about.
Is this an encyclical?
It's just a letter. I don't know.
An apostolic letter or something like that?
Yeah.
Or even more informal than that?
Might be more informal, yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That's really cool.
I had no idea that
I
existed.
didn't either.
It's worth a read. Yeah, it's
That's
pretty
awesome.
short, yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll look it up. We'll include that in the show notes if we publish this. That's awesome. Yeah, I love, we really like JP2's theology. Laborem Exercens is a fantastic encyclical. Theology of work is very important to what we do here. Yeah.
Because, even people who are inventing new things, right? Like, all right, let me say it this way. When were robots invented? I think it was 1934 when Isaac Asimov published I, Robot.
Okay.
Oh, you mean the definition?
No, what is...
Oh,
in what... In
the concept of robot.
Well, because here's the thing, right? When you look at the things that engineers and other whatever they end up calling themselves at a particular time end up creating, there's always something before that inspires them, right? And the way you can look at it is you're taking pieces of things that already exist and assigning different natures to them. So the robots in iRobot are humans, but only the mechanical parts of a human.
Oh.
Really?
Have you seen? Well, the movie, they made a movie, iRobot, which is
I know
you can
the
also watch.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
I mean, I've seen the movie.
I mean, but that's
mechanical components, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's my thought of like, well, how does one invent a robot? Well, you take a human and you boil it down to just the mechanical components and still have it move somehow.
Yep.
And that's a robot. Huh. And then when was a computer invented that you could talk to and it would respond? Well, that's in the 1950s because that's Star Trek.
That the concept, yeah.
But that's having the communicative portion of a person, or maybe talking on the phone and applying it to this newfangled computer technology that just was invented, and things like that.
Yeah, there's always something that predates it, and there's usually actually there's almost a sexual nature to it as well. Because usually it happens when multiple things kind of converge. It's not asexual. It's actually, so you speak about computers. I don't know. Well, yeah, okay. So if you're merging a phone and a computer, where does a computer come from? Originally it comes from, well, we're in a great town for it. Not rocks. No, it comes from looms.
Yeah, the logistical side of the computing is partially
all like because we want to create fancy patterns in textiles.
Mm.
That's where this originally it comes from that. So like we've merged looms with telephones, and you get a computer that can talk to you. Like there's a combinatorial aspect that has occurred since the very initial material creation of God. It's kind of all sexual in nature from there.
Going off that point. So, okay, this is really interesting. The nature of man doing creation, or a lot of times what I've read in like some like books and whatnot, is this idea of like, this is more of like a theological idea, I suppose, but having a thing. Have you heard of the logic problem? Can a computer duplicate itself or make a computer that's better than itself? Like the idea, can something that is lesser make something that is greater than itself?
Yep.
You heard that?
It's like the singularity problem of if humans can create machines that are...
So,
okay,
if we go with the thought process of if a thing can only make something that is either equal to or lesser than itself, then we take a step back and say, okay, then how are we making so many things like across all of time? And my brain jumps to, it is kind of like the numinosity in that you're observing the world and seeing the beauty that is in it since it is God's creation. By doing so, you're giving yourself more tools to make things. For example, Da Vinci's work with like the flying machines and whatnot were based on birds and other creatures that were part of creation. So the fuel almost of learning how to make more things is observing the beauty that has already been created by God. And then through that, being able to take inspiration from that and push forward the creative process in that manner of speaking.
Yeah.
It is, again, still you're taking from the tools that are already there, which is God's creation, and then either coming up with ideas or making things out of it.
And even when you say, like, looking at God's creation, you're looking at generally patterns.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, and ideas. You're looking at the logos is ultimately what you're looking to nature for in those instances. You're looking for the logos. The fatherly is a masculine concept because it's dealing with ideas and structures. But then you're taking those ideas and patterns that you see in nature and applying them to pre-existing material. Material is generally considered more feminine, hence why Mary is the Theotokos and the bridge between heaven and earth. And what's so special about her is that she's material through which God comes. Anyways, so there's kind of this weird, like, it's a sexual union almost that you're taking ideas and patterns that are from God and masculine in nature and marrying them to things of the material world where those ideas could be re-implemented and bear fruit.
I like that a lot. That's so on point.
Or not. I have no idea.
I
always feel weird when I talk about things with sexual analogies, but I think there is a lot to it.
Well, let me take one more step here and see if we want to stop after that.
Go.
So what you're saying is when men don't have easy access to sex with their same species, they make other sexual unions to make art somewhere else.
What?
Say that again. 'Cause I think you're right, but
so it's a you also see this idea in the dating world where things like pornography being easily accessible means men have their sexual urges satisfied in a non-productive manner.
Yes.
So when you remove the easy access of fulfilling that in a non-productive manner, men are forced by their nature to be productive, whether it is with a spouse making children, or whether it is creating works of art, or whether it is creating machine things, whatever it ends up being. It is in somehow creative. And like you said, that creative process has a sexual nature to it. Ergo, the connection.
I see.
Yes. I think there's a lot to that.
I have to agree.
Yeah, same.
I'm curious. So if the logos is, you characterize it as masculine, is creation itself feminine? And logos is kind of the ordering of the creation?
I don't think the conception of Mother Earth is particularly wrong. I think that, yes, kind of the material around us has a sort of more feminine nature to it.
I think the connection we were having with using the sexual analogy, that it's a union of the two that causes creation, whereas one is existence and the other is the logic, the ordering.
The existence is the feminine.
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then, okay. Yeah.
The embodiment is the feminine. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, yes, we've gotten up to the point where we have the garden, we have Eve, and now we have the fall. So we've talked about where we're supposed to be, kind of what's supposed to happen. Now what do we actually do in reality? Now the serpent was the most cunning of all the animals that the Lord God had made. The serpent asked the woman, "Did God really tell you not to eat from any of the trees in the garden?" The woman answered the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. It is only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, 'You shall not eat it or even touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You certainly will not die. No, God knows well that the moment that you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods who know what is good and what is bad.' The woman saw that the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eyes, and desirable for gaining wisdom. So she took some of its fruit and ate it. And she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. And then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. And when they heard the sound of the Lord God moving about in the garden at the breezy time of the day, the man and his wife hid themselves from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. The Lord God then called to the man and asked him, 'Where are you?' He answered, 'I heard you in the garden, but I was afraid because I was naked, and so I hid myself.' Then he asked, 'Who told you that you were naked? You have eaten, then, from the tree of which I had forbidden you to eat.' And the man replied, 'The woman whom you put here with me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and so I ate it.' The Lord God then asked the woman, 'Why would you do such a thing?' The woman answered, 'The serpent tricked me into it, and so I ate it.' And then the Lord God said to the serpent, 'Because you have done this, you shall be banned from all the animals and all the wild creatures. On your belly you shall crawl, and dirt you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike at your hand, while you strike at his heel.' To the woman he said, 'I will intensify the pangs of your childbearing. In pain shall you bring forth children, yet your urge shall be for your husband, and he shall be your master.' And to the man he said, 'Because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree of which I had forbidden you to eat, cursed be the ground because of you. In toil shall you eat its yield all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to you, as you eat of the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face shall you get bread to eat, until you return to the ground from which you were taken, for you are dirt, and to dirt you shall return.' The man called his wife Eve, because she became the mother of all the living. For the man and his wife the Lord God made leather garments with which he clothed them. Then the Lord God said, 'See, the man has become like one of us, knowing what is good and what is bad. Therefore he must not be allowed to put out his hand to take fruit from the tree of life also, and thus eat of it and live forever.' The Lord God therefore banished him from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he had been taken. When he expelled the man, he settled him east of the Garden of Eden, and he stationed the cherubim and the fire-revolving sword to guard the way to the tree of life." What stood out to folks?
I thought I'm in this kind of conundrum trying to resolve something in my head. When the serpent tempted Eve, the first things I thought of was, is he exhibiting signs of creativity? There are ways to use creativity. No, hear me out. So there's ways you can be creative for evil ends, or ends that do not obviously end with God. Like, for example, you have some TV nowadays is a great example, like CSI shows and whatnot, where they'll show like killers who are really creative about getting away with the deed, so to speak, right? And using creativity in a manner of causing harm to others. And that makes me think of, was the serpent exhibiting signs of creativity and trying to come up with a lie that would be believable, or to encourage Adam and Eve to take the actions they did? And that was really, really interesting. Like the whole like silver-tongued kind of...
The silver-tongued devil?
Yeah.
I can see it being creative. So you're taking something which has existed,
right,
the truth,
right,
and then you're dividing it, but instead of dividing it correctly, you divide it like perpendicular. Wrong direction.
Then combine it with something not true, rather than the purity that we saw in chapters 1 and 2.
Because all lies that are compelling lies have truth in them.
all good lies have a kernel of truth.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
Interesting.
obviously they didn't die. Not immediately.
Eventually.
Eventually, yes. This was the seed of their destruction. So there was some truth in it. You know, you're not going to die immediately.
You're not going to die, ... immediately.
Yet.
I mean, there was truth in that. What do you say that if you eat of the tree, you'll be as wise as even God is, because you'll know all of good and all of evil. And then later on in the same chapter, God talks to his other persons and says, "We cannot let him eat of the tree of life, lest he live forever."
Mm-hmm.
That portion had kernel and truth in it as well.
Yep. Which is always an interesting. I always love going through this, and every time you go through scripture, you get something new out of it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
I was actually in Sunday school this Sunday. I was teaching the kids, and the big thing that really we focused on through Genesis was actually, what is the nature of reality? Well, it's familial. I mean, what is God? God is a father. And so it makes Cain and Abel, or not Cain and Abel, makes Adam and Eve. This comes later. Makes Adam and Eve. They are children. What do children need to do? They need to mature and learn. You don't immediately send a child out into the world. And so the concern here, and I'm not sure that this is a completely correct reading of it, but the thing that occurs to me is it's not so much that we ate of the fruit, it's that we ate of the fruit too early and on our own terms.
Oh. Huh.
Which, tying that back to creativity, and things go awry in the creative process when you hasten too quick to the end result, right?
It's true.
When you try and jump to finished design, bing, done. When you think that it's a linear process, and actually it's going to take longer. It's going to take some more patience. If you just try and ship your first idea of what this is supposed to be and go right to the end goal, you run into a lot of problems very quickly.
Actually, Thad, you and I had a brief discussion about this, where the nature of knowing something and learning, there's a difference between getting just the numbers and bits of information about a thing versus truly knowing what the thing is and taking the time to understand it, putting a lifetime into a craft to know something versus just reading a book and saying you know it.
Yeah. To actually have the experiential aspect of
Bingo, yeah. So, Kevin, you do oil painting, you said?
Mm-hmm.
What types of things do you like to paint, or do you have a preference of what you like to make?
I'm a representational oil painter, so I typically paint still lifes, people, landscapes.
That makes yeah.
But I'm working towards imaginative painting, making things, not making things up, but kind of constructing things from references and to get into the kind of the sacred art space. So,
I like that. So, one thing that I'm thinking of is participating in the creative process allows for the reception or a deeper understanding of the thing you're working on. So, for example, what this makes me think of is when I was in high school, I had guitar students. I had 7 of them. And I taught them guitar. And I think I learned more about music in those 4 months that I taught those students than I think in any other point of me doing music. Because in me teaching the thing and being creative with the thing, I ended up understanding more about it.
Oh yeah,
Almost.
they say a lot that the way you truly come to understand a topic is if you can teach it to somebody. So a lot of times, if you're trying to explain something to someone and they don't get it multiple times, chances are you're the one who doesn't understand what you're talking about.
I think part of that is you have concepts in your head, and when you're trying to explain them to other people, you're attaching words and detaching words to those concepts in different ways, and in some way kind of shaping your understanding of that concept.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. I like that. That's
the naming aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of, like, if you're doing a painting, let's say, of a landscape. Like, if you were to do a painting of you pick a spot that you really enjoy, and you do paintings of that landscape, like, every week for a year, let's say, you end up understanding a lot more about that location through the fact that you have studied and been creative using that and understanding more about that lake or the valley of trees or whatnot that you might be painting. Like, do you think since Adam now had to toil for the earth to bear fruit, you know where I'm going with this?
I think I know where you're going with this. I like it.
Do you think through Adam putting in work to have the earth bear fruit, he, through that experience, learned more about God's creation?
Innumerably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like playing catch up for all the stuff that he didn't learn in preparation to eating the fruit.
Bingo. That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
So now we're like making up for lost time. That's cool.
The shortcut is actually a long cut.
And now we have all of humanity and all of its woes and all of its glories, but all of its woes. Yeah. So another thing that's interesting, and I've just found this interesting, I'm not sure how it connects exactly. In the garden, we eat from fruit trees.
Yes.
In the banishment, we toil in the field and we eat from the field. It's a very different sort of thing between this tree, which presents you fruit that is ripe and pleasing, ready for the taking, versus grains, which you have to expend a good bit of energy to get them to grow right. And even when you do, you got to collect them all. You got to chafe them all. It's a whole process. It's a whole rigmarole to get anywhere.
Not only that, but it specifically mentions that, what is it, thorns and something else are going to be growing first?
Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to you as you eat the plants of the field.
Before the fall, it just seems to imply that everything that was growing was both pleasing and edible. And afterwards, the ground being cursed means it's going to bring forth things that are ugly and inedible. So the toil is then you have to remove the bad in order to even have a chance at those grains that you have to, again, toil to turn into something that's food.
Oh, that's funny. It's almost like, oh, you think you're so great and you're God and everything. All right, fine. Here, have at the creative process. Get rid of the bad stuff.
Separate all of the bad stuff so it's all on one side and we only have the good left over. Get to it.
Literally separate the wheat from the chaff.
Literally separate the bad from the good. I separated the darkness from the light. Now it's your turn to figure that out, basically.
Yeah. The people who are like, God isn't that great because human bodies are so inefficient. Like, oh, come on, dude. Like, you could do better.
So there's an interesting argument that I really like, which is that humans are actually frugivores.
What's the word?
Frugivores.
Frugivore.
We are designed to eat fruit.
Oh, frutivore?
I believe it's called frugivore with a G.
Oh, I thought you were talking about people meant to be frugal or something.
No.
I was super
I don't know why it has a G. Maybe it actually doesn't have a G and it is a T.
But specifically for fruit.
For fruit and nuts, I believe. Because like they'll do the whole like show a picture of an ape and then show a person of a human, show a person of like a horse and you know like which is the most alike? What do they eat today? Well, yeah. Chimps eat predominantly fruit and nuts.
Well, we physically
and our mouths are arguably designed to ingest fruit. The easiest because we have teeth in the front, which are great for slicing things.
Yep.
Not particularly optimized for meat. And then we've got stuff in the back for grinding things, which is okay, good for nuts and fruit to some degree. But why do you have that for meat? And why do you have the front teeth if you're supposed to eat grains? And, you could say that, okay, well, yeah, man is an omnivore, or you could come to the conclusion that man is actually supposed to eat fruit.
Even if man is an omnivore, right, we can't eat raw meat like a lot of other animals can.
Is that true?
Well, I think it's typically unhealthy because you don't have the capability to fight the bacteria and whatnot that might be in the raw meat. That's why we commonly cook our meats. I mean, sushi, I guess, is an exception, but it's not like you're going to eat like a raw steak that often. I don't think, at least. I could be way out of my league.
I don't really know.
I'm not sure. I know it's not advised because of parasites and things.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm thinking of.
Because cooking definitely kills the parasites, but
right.
I mean, fish, the way sushi is prepared is such that you're not going to get a moldy old fish, make that into sushi.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's prepared clean.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get a pig that's been living in the dirt its whole life and you're carving hunks off of that
could be it.
Who knows? Because the pig doesn't care about the parasites.
I suppose, in a manner of speaking, we're omnivores to the point that we, as part of our duty to work and create, we also need to experience the thing to create it. I'm not saying, I mean, I guess you could say culinary arts and whatnot, but in that realm, we need the ability to experience all the palate before we start toying with the palate.
Yeah. You don't create things that you aren't going to use.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's why it's very difficult. I think this is one of the major things and breakdowns that you see in industry, where people get really siloed into only knowing one discipline, only knowing one thing. They don't actually... the classic dichotomy is between engineers and mechanics. Mostly auto engineers, but, any engineer is always kind of in a little bit of a battle with his technician because the tech knows things that the engineer doesn't and can't even communicate to him because the engineer just isn't in the paint all the time knowing the things. But the inverse is also true too, where there's a lot of stuff that's written down and all the theory's been done and, the engineer's actually gone through and analyzed a couple different designs. They've laid it out this way and they know that, okay, you do this other ways, it's just not gonna happen. And so there's like a dichotomy that emerges because the person doing the creation is not the person doing the experiencing.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
I forget who I was talking to, but that reminds me of someone talking about electrical engineers and electricians, where apparently someone, I forget who I was talking to, but this person knew, this scenario was the electrical engineer had designed this room, which apparently put some kind of optimal location for an outlet at a particular spot on the wall. And the electrician said that's never going to go there. And the electrical engineer said, well, why not? Because the cabinet goes there. You're not going to put an electrical outlet inside your cabinet.
Yeah, seeing the whole picture is difficult.
It can be, yeah.
It's very, very difficult.
It's one of those things when you go to do performance reviews. So it sees the big picture. It's a compliment.
Has an existential crisis about the big picture. Not a compliment.
Nope.
That's usually the side of the equation that I end up on is I'm looking at so many things. It's difficult to figure out what actually is actionable and can you focus on.
Yeah, we need you to see the big picture, but also stop complaining and get back to work.
Yeah, literally been the last few weeks at work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, past few days we were working on a project and eventually I got brought into it after we did the proposals and the initial design concepts, and got asked to kind of like flesh things out and vet things out, and started and said, okay, let's do this, and did some initial calculations. It's like, you want to move a how heavy payload how fast? We're not doing that.
Faster than that.
We're not doing that. And you then go back and say to someone above you, like, hey, you really didn't actually go through the experience here. We have to go in a different direction here.
Reminds me of the Soviet Union, except you're not in a gulag.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. The railway engineers mostly got gulagged because they kept saying, hey, we can't keep putting this much weight across these rails this fast. And the actual Soviets were like, oh, well, you're a wrecker. And the nature of all engineers is wrecking and just destroying the plan that the centralized council has decided was correct. And so a lot of the railway engineers early on in the Soviet Union ended up in the gulag. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah.
And the only reason it's not working is because you're not dedicated enough to the revolution.
Mm-hmm. If you would only engineer harder, we would be able to defy the laws of physics.
Exactly.
You don't get any extra budget. You don't get to change the scope. You don't get to change the materials. You don't get to change anything, but it's just going to work.
No, you just have to work more. You only need 4 hours of sleep to, get to be, fully awake, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever run into that while painting, Kevin? The try to get the big picture, but also you need to keep working? Because in my experience, it's largely corporate, but also I'm not really a painter at all. So
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
You get like scope creep asks, like, oh, can you be better about this? But I'm not going to pay you more. I'm not going to give you more hours to do this.
Yeah, there can be a lack of understanding from the client side about what it takes to render something that they want. Some things are more difficult than others, so.
So it's interesting we say, like, the solution is not actually to work harder, but it actually is like you got to go back to the drawing board, because that's the story of our salvation right there, right? There's a time and a place to work hard and be diligent, but being diligent at whatever you're currently doing to a T is probably a good path to hell, right? Like there has to be that point of reflection, retrospection, realignment if we want to be born again and to be recreated anew. There has to be that time where we evaluate, separate the bits of ourselves that are evil and terrible, the directions that we're working towards that are wrong, and then actually move forwards.
Yeah, it's almost like what you were saying with design being iterative. There's a point to look at the relationships in your life, look at the things you're doing, look at the tasks you're being diligent about, and actually reevaluating from what you thought they were, and just figure out what are they actually now, and then making choices, sometimes hard ones, based on what they've actually become.
Okay, I want to do a slightly weird reading. Not slightly weird. It's relevant. This has to do more with artisans and craftsmen. This is Exodus 35. Would you actually like to do the reading?
Yes.
I hate verses. If you haven't noticed, I like to do whole chapters.
I've noticed.
Get the big picture.
Big picture type of guy.
Okay. Moses assembled the whole Israelite community and said to them, "This is what the Lord has commanded to be done. On 6 days work may be done, but the seventh day shall be sacred to you as a Sabbath of complete rest to the Lord. Anyone who does work on that day shall be put to death. You shall not even light a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day." Moses told the whole Israelite community, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take up among you a collection for the Lord. Everyone as his heart prompts him shall bring as a contribution to the Lord gold, silver, and bronze, violet, purple, and scarlet yarn, fine linen, and goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and to hash skins, acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and other gems for mounting on the ephod and on the breastpiece. Let every expert among you come and make all that the Lord has commanded: the dwelling with its tent, its covering, its clasps, its boards, its bars, its columns, and its pedestals, the ark with its poles, the propitiatory, and the curtain veil, the table with its poles and all its appurtenances, and the showbread, the lampstand with its appurtenances, the lamps and the oil for the light, the altar of incense with its poles, the anointing oil, and the fragrant incense, the entrance curtain for the entrance of the dwelling, the altar of the holocausts with its bronze grating, its poles, and all its appurtenances, the laver with its base, the hangings of the court, with their columns and pedestals, the curtain for the entrance of the court, the tent pegs for the dwelling and for the court, with their ropes, the service cloths for use in the sanctuary, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and the vestments worn by his sons in their ministry. When the whole Israelite community left Moses' presence, everyone, as his heart suggested and his spirit prompted, brought a contribution to the Lord for the construction of the meeting tent, for all its services and for the sacred vestments. Both the men and the women, all as their heart prompted them, brought brooches, earrings, rings, necklaces, and various other gold articles. Everyone who could presented an offering of gold to the Lord. Everyone who happened to have violet, purple, or scarlet yarn, fine linen, or goat hair, ram skins dyed red or tahash skins, brought them. Whoever could make a contribution of silver or bronze offered it to the Lord, and everyone who happened to have acacia wood for any part of the work brought it. All the women who were expert spinners brought hand-spun violet, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen thread. All the women who possessed the skill spun goat hair. The princes brought onyx stones and other gems for mounting on the ephod and on the breastpiece, as well as spices and oil for the light, anointing oil and fragrant incense. Every Israelite man and woman brought to the Lord such voluntary offerings as they thought best, for the various kinds of work which the Lord had commanded Moses to have done. Moses said to the Israelites, "See, the Lord has chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and has filled him with the divine spirit of skill and understanding and knowledge in every craft, in the production of embroidery, in making things of gold, silver, or bronze, in cutting and mounting precious stones, in carving wood, and in every other craft. He has also given both him and Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. He has endowed them with skill to execute all types of work, engraving, embroidering, the making of variegated cloth of violet, purple and scarlet yarn, and fine linen thread, weaving, and all other arts and crafts."
What stood out to people?
So, the biggest thing that stood out to me, when they mentioned, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the one who had knowledge of every craft, they said that God bestowed upon him, or the Spirit bestowed upon him, knowledge of every craft. It made me take a step back and think about how we learn. A lot of times in society we say, oh, I put work into something, therefore I learned more about it. When in reality, I think a better way of describing it is, by learning about something, you're participating in God's creation. In doing so, God bestows upon you the knowledge of the thing by participating in his creation, rather than saying, I went and did a thing, so I learned about said thing. It's almost like knowledge is like it is gifted by participating in creation.
The thing that stood out to me actually is that none of the verbs there for the craftsman are create.
Huh.
Right?
Oh, really?
Each craftsman has each craft has a different verb specific to what that craft is. Weaving is the one that I actually remembered. Yep. Which then made me tie back to, well, creative and creativity are just different forms, different parts of speech of the verb create. And since God is the only one who actually did a create, then creative would then be work approaching a closeness with that first create, which in turn requires the craftsman to have a certain closeness with God.
Mm-hmm. We do have, in making things of gold, silver, or bronze, but I think you're correct in your overall understanding. Yeah, it's very much everything is transformative. So the passage again,
Yeah.
I'll just give this. And then. See, the Lord has chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and has filled him with the divine spirit of skill and understanding and knowledge in every craft, in the production of embroidery, in making things of gold, silver, or bronze, in cutting and mounting precious stones, in carving wood, and in every other craft. Yeah, very.
And we have words, and depending on translation, right? We have words for making things of gold and silver. It's smithing and smelting.
Smithing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the, I suppose, incorrect use of the word create that I commonly see in like coding and web development and whatnot. Most likely, I assume, because there's a lack of physical or tangibility to making the thing. So it feels like you're making something out of nothing through like coding. A lot of times when you see like the website ad maker things, like, oh, create your own website, and it uses the incorrect verbs because it feels like you're making something out of nothing, when in reality you're not, even though it might not be as immediate knowing that you are manipulating something. It just feels like, oh, I just did a thing and boom, it exists now. Because it's so abstracted, a lot of people don't see like all the back end stuff that happens.
It appears to be ex nihilo, but it's not.
Bingo. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, we use the word create a lot in our language, like improperly.
Mm-hmm.
It's languages have different verbs they overuse and have both vague and specific meanings. Like in German, you can use the word machen, where we get make from. Literally, it's the replacement verb for whatever actual verb you're doing. It doesn't
really.
Yeah,
it's transient.
It's like think of the English word got.
Oh,
you can use your entire day, everything you do, you can use from get and got, and every time you use it, it actually means something different. I got up, I got breakfast, I got in my car, I got to work, I got work done.
Yeah, it's based on context. That's good. Yeah. Got milk.
I got milk. Yes.
I got milk. Got eggs.
I got a flat tire.
Oh.
I got jailed.
Yeah.
What stood out to me in this reading was that all of the beauty and the materials and the effort and the craftsmanship is all intended for the worship of God.
Yep.
Which actually makes me think of what you said, Nathaniel, about creating a code, which the end of that is some particular function. Here, the end of this creativity, let's say, is worship.
Mm-hmm.
So we might consider a different species of creativity.
It's almost like creativity with a lack of God is almost vain or has vanity in it, almost. If it's not pointing at the right, if it's not guided to the right thing.
So, worship means pretty much worthship. So, ascribing worth to something. There's an interesting idea that, and it's not entirely wrong, that pretty much everything we do is worship. When we partake in a thing, when we make efforts and sacrifices towards that thing, we are saying that it is worth that sacrifice and that use of our time. Now, obviously, labor that we do to sustain ourselves is, in a weird way, I guess it is self-worship in the very lowest sense, that we say that, yes, it is worth living and eating and surviving. So there's an interesting question of, or not a question, but very often once we build up a certain level of base sustenance as a society, then we can start creating things that most people call art. I don't entirely agree with that definition. I'm curious what you think of like we start creating things that don't have a utilitarian purpose. Put utilitarian in quotes, but like we don't use it for something else. It's kind of the end in of itself. That's kind of, well, that's the end. That's the telos. That's the thing that we're worshiping. So here we are creating all of these fine arts and fine crafts for the express purpose of glorifying God, for that worship and for that worthiness. Whereas if we're spending excess energy on things that aren't that, but I feel like there's it's easy to get bent out of shape on that and a little bit out of balance, because like, can we still produce things that are, so to speak, superfluous, that are glorifying, that are not done in the context of a church, are not icons or expressly religious? Is that a good thing? I feel like the answer is yes, to a certain degree, insofar as they still reflect the nature of reality and God's logos. So I think novels are great examples of this. Stories that have lessons and of moral nature, even if the name of God is not invoked, even if the idea of a deity is not expressly mentioned.
It's like leading those to the true and the good.
Yeah.
Like there's a moral behind it.
With allegory, right? Like that is a sort of art.
Okay. I have a thought, especially on the novel bit, but you did. I think the question was directed at Kevin, and then you just kept going. I don't remember what the question was.
I don't think you asked it yet.
I was curious. Well, I was curious what your idea of how broad is the term art spread.
Ooh. Yeah, I stay away from that word because I don't know what it means.
Okay.
So I'll give you a definition.
Yeah, what's the definition?
It's a work performed to a standard.
A work performed to a standard. Okay, so it's good to have a definition, but
that's the one I like using, because that's the one that was that, at least in kind of the classical period, was used, and so that's where when I say the things that we can now call trades are also arts, because that's the definition that the classical period used.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, the fine arts are also more like trades than anything else.
Yeah.
But culturally understood in the present, that's not the definition of art, which, so it's been kind of stolen away from its true definition. I would agree with that definition more than the contemporary one.
Yeah, because the way I kind of see it is what we consider the fine arts. A lot of the push has been to remove all standards.
Yep.
Right, and to still have the what's the word, the respect, some other word similar to
veneration,
that. I wouldn't even say veneration.
Prestige.
That's probably too much. Yeah, the prestige of like your Renaissance painters who can so perfectly depict a person that they try to figure out who it was 600 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the trades, on the other hand, what we now consider just the trades, have been so regulated that there's not a lot of will of your plumber, your carpenter in, building a house, because everything's codified so much. It's the change in standards between the two.
There's less of it. It's not gone, but there is less of it, I think.
Yeah. That's how I see it still applying. But yeah, on the subject of novels, since you brought that up, right? They don't need to explicitly invoke God, even though sometimes it's fun if they do. So some of the indie authors that have been publishing that I follow, at least one of them has a theory, right, of people talk about culture war, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Well, the thing you do, right, so you're not writing boring message fiction, which is, this is how you should act. Fiction.
Like Ayn Rand, Fountainhead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that, or like a lot of the stuff of particular political persuasions these days.
Yes.
You make a character that your audience likes, and you see him succeeding by embodying some virtue.
Okay.
That is the start.
Okay.
And that's how you get propaganda to work for you instead of against you.
Ah, okay.
I see what you're saying. It's almost like showing through example.
Yeah,
versus...
if you look back through Hollywood, right, and if you can see movies that are very popular, but also very anti-God because they are good movies, because the characters in them are appealing characters, going through whatever situation that people can relate to, and the bad guys are whatever religious person the director didn't happen to like.
That's true though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's used in any direction.
Yeah.
But that's the nuts and bolts of it. It's after you get control over whatever the levers of producing culture happen to be, they can go ahead and make something blatantly terrible, but directly saying this is how you should act and you're stupid if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say virtue, do you mean
so when I said virtue originally, I mean like you could say like Christian virtue, right? If you're trying to make people trend more towards God, you would be showing Christian virtues. Mm-hmm. Theological ones, cardinal ones, stuff like that, the knightly virtues.
Yeah. This is a fun thing. Maybe Noel would actually be better at this, but
maybe.
Is that inherently propaganda whenever you create that simplistic thing? Or
if you, well, it's not always simplistic, but yeah, to answer the question there, propaganda is anything when you make your side look cool and the other side look cringe. So
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Propaganda is just public relations using its old name. If you are tailoring your image to make it seem the best possible,
favorable light, yep,
you are using some form of propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a nasty word because of how closely people associate it with some pretty awful conflicts, and that's fair. But there is more to it than that.
Yeah. So are all really compelling novels at a certain point propaganda?
Possibly. I think if you delve into what the author believed and see how the characters come out, right? Like I said, I was thinking of an example of Christian virtue being what is shown, even if you aren't explicitly mentioning God. But if an author is writing, and you can kind of say like this person who is succeeding by virtue of this. Well, this author thinks this thing is good, and the people who like that character must be are grabbing on to those pieces of virtue that they relate to. And sometimes authors do it without meaning to, or they take a character they think is bad and that's their favorite character. Like, what's the Colonel's name from Apocalypse Now?
I don't know.
I don't remember his name, but the director, or the guy who wrote the film, I don't think he directed, but he intended that guy to be hated. And he is like the favorite character of everyone who watches Apocalypse Now. So he clearly didn't understand his audience, and the attempt at making your macho surfer military guy into a bad person failed, despite everything that happens in the movie. There's the same thing for Watchmen, the comics. What's his name? Rorschach was intended to be a hated character.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
But he's the only one who stands by his beliefs, so everyone likes him.
So I think we already answered, actually. So when we're being creative, boundaries actually are not like a limiting factor, but they're actually an essential factor.
Oh, 100%.
Yes, definitely. Restriction breeds creativity. Quite literally.
Yes.
I mean,
in a couple different ways.
Yeah, like there's a certain video game that has been released maybe 20, 30 times by now called Skyrim.
Yes.
They removed any and all classes, so anything you do at any time can upgrade XYZ skill. Everyone plays it the same now because there's no restrictions on how, so everyone does it the same way.
Yeah.
From the start.
Interesting.
Like you start off, I'm going to do this, and then
I didn't know that's how that kind of devolved.
that's how the class system in the Elder Scrolls game devolved. They took away your primary and secondary skills that you would create at character creation, and now everyone plays it the same way.
Yep. There's no variance, or you lose variance.
Well, okay, so that's actually...
So it's gone from,
Does creativity necessitate that we have novelty, though? And that we get divergence?
Novelty? I would probably say no.
What do you mean by novelty? Just so I'm on the same page here.
Something that's new and unexpected. We have we have a connotation in our culture that if you're being creative, you're being novel. You're doing something strange and out of the ordinary. Like if you're a carpenter and you're building houses to code, you're not exactly creative. This is what I think a lot of people would think. But is that correct? Like, in our 3-step process of what creativity is...
3-step program.
3-step program. Material, separate... What do we call that second step we liked? We had a good word.
I used bounding at one point.
Bounding.
When God's naming the light in the dark.
Yeah.
And separation.
Yeah. So, we have material... bounding and separation, and then naming, which you go about a couple different ways of interpreting what that is. In no place in there is it necessarily divergent.
Well,
right?
I'm thinking, is it novel in the fact that what we assume is the status quo is the overemphasis of repeatability for like manufacturing and whatnot? Like, for example, when you go through the creative process of discovering how to make a good house, right?
Yeah.
Then you have come to an endpoint, so to speak, that is a creation. It is a creation. It is creative process. But are we seeing it as novel because we are used to, once a house has been produced, that we have the tools and means by which to effectively duplicate that house via production and whatnot, that it feels novel when someone also engages in the act of creativity? Does that make sense?
I didn't quite follow that. Say that again.
So if our status quo for making things is that once something is made in a way to be repeatable, right? So
yes, we live in a culture that's very much we want to scale things, we want to mass manufacture things.
Bingo.
Yep.
Does it then feel like novelty when someone goes through the creative process anew to come up with something different? Because we are used to mass manufacturing things in large quantities. We're used to designing molds, not things.
Well, yes,
it
is novelty when you get those new things, when you get those new forms, when you get the new molds. That is novelty. I guess what I'm asking, though, is creativity only those cases where you get new molds? Or does creativity occur every time you inject plastic into the molds?
I see what you mean. Okay.
So to speak. Because, and I guess that feeds into a larger question of, is design emergent or divergent? Or, convergent or divergent? Does design tend towards a particular thing, or does it diverge into multiple different things? Should we actually be satisfied with the fact that, like, I think we can all say that, convergent design is quite frequently boring unless you're really, really interested in the thing. Formula One's a great example of this. like all F1 cars are basically the same. It's all just margins and tiny little tweaks here and there. My buddies in F1 will actually come down, like, probably shoot me for saying something so heretical because they understand all the little nuances that are going on, and so they're huge.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when you're actually in that realm, the little things actually seem much larger than they are, whereas to the outsider, you look at, like, Red Bull's car, and then you set it right next to, who's the crappy team? I don't remember who's exactly the worst right now.
Let's just use Monster, because it's also an energy drink.
But they don't have an F1.
I don't care. I don't watch F1.
Well, is creation so incredibly, unfathomably intricate that it comes across like engineering has to be divergent because of how intricate the creation is? Like, is our understanding of creation, we observe it as being divergent because we cannot actually fathom how intricate creation actually is?
Or because there was so much sprawl in the first place that we see the beginnings of convergence that hasn't converged yet, and it still looks divergent.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can see that very much being the case, because there's a lot of times I'll think about, wouldn't it be great if I had this particular thing to solve this problem? You do enough research and you find someone's already built it, and you could buy it.
Nihil nova sub sola.
You what?
Nihil nova sub sola.
Which means?
There's nothing new under the sun.
That's what I thought. So, yeah, there's a great deal of convergence in design, and it's not perfect, of course, but very oftenly, when there is a clearly defined goal and target that you're trying to achieve, the creative process executed amongst parallel people converges to a particular design quite frequently. When there is more room and the actual goal that you're trying to achieve is more nebulous, then you get more divergent design.
This makes me think of paintings again. So I don't remember when this happened. I assume it was during the Enlightenment or something. But it used to be that they would not recreate. I can't use that word anymore. It's the wrong way to use it.
Reproduce.
Reproduce. There we go. If they wanted to reproduce a landscape or a still life or a person or things that are of nature, it was glorifying God in that what you were making was something that God had made, and you were trying to reproduce that in a different light, versus what happens now, where paintings are now signed by or just creations in general are signed by the people who worked on them.
Yeah, and that's a very big innovation.
Yeah, and there is now this precedent that you can create things that don't exist. So, like, if you're doing, like, it's the difference between, like, doing a portrait of a person versus making a painting of a fictional character that doesn't exist. That might take aspects of people you have seen or features you have seen and culminating it into something, but where it's divergent in that doesn't have as direct of a connection to, like, God's creation, so to speak. You start, like, taking that seat of, oh, I made this thing. This character's my idea. It's more possessive, I suppose.
Yeah.
Not in everything, but I think it's definitely more prominent now than it used to be.
How does that play out in your work?
Can you say more?
So,
again.
Do you often find, because you mentioned actually that you do a little bit between what you called imaginative work and actually trying to reproduce a physical thing. How does the process differ? Do you feel like you do something differently? Obviously you do, but so how does it differ between the two?
I guess when I'm working from nature, the goal is to make the painting look like nature. So you're There is an aspect of humility. You have to just sit there and observe and forget what you think you know about the stuff before you and just kind of receive it in a sense. Working imaginatively, the goal is to make the thing feel like nature, but it's not from nature. It's from your imagination, obviously. So, yeah, I don't know. Does that?
How do you go from imagination to actually painting something?
A lot of like thumbnail sketches. To kind of work out the composition and the colors and stuff, and different studies from life. From do a drawing from a person or something, and then put that next to another drawing from a person.
Do you have that same level of like rigor and iterative process for when you're doing reproductive art?
What do you mean by reproductive art?
Like you're trying to paint something that already exists.
Like if you're painting me. Right. Is it the same rigor than if you were to like you had an image in your
not
head?
so much the rigor, but like the actual fact that you're going through and you're making some like detail sketches and schematics, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say it's comparable. I mean, I usually, if I'm doing a still life, let's say, I usually do a few studies before I do the real thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's still you're still actually creating like a skeleton and the schematic before you build the actual thing either way.
Yeah, I guess so. And would the purpose of a schematic be to understand it better?
I mean, that's very much why, in the engineering disciplines, why we build schematics is so they, in a way, like schematics are truer than the actual thing itself. Yeah, the Visio diagram speaks more truth.
Visio diagrams. I'm just glad I didn't have to make the first one.
Until the implementation actually doesn't match what the schematic is, and then of course, the schematic's useless. But like that is why we build those simplified representations of things, is to kind of get a better handle of what's going on. Right? Like I don't need to care about like this is Schedule 40 pipe and it's got a threaded NPT connection here. I just draw a line. It's not important right now.
Right, you're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. And do the same thing with painting too.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, no, I was thinking about the, I guess the housing industry, and I don't know if you know about the company Boxable, but they're trying to
I think I've heard of them. The, lot of prefab type of house building.
Yep. Prefab houses, just like, they're trying to turn over like one house a day or something like that. A big
like literally printing houses? Like
not printing it, but assembling it.
Oh, wow. Okay, wow.
Is this still timber frame houses? Or not timber frame, but 2x4 framing?
I don't believe so. I believe it's all made out of metal, I think, but...
whoa.
Okay.
I could be wrong. About that.
Huh.
Yeah, but they're kind of like small little houses, 500 square feet or something, but I guess they have different models, but...
Gotcha.
The goal is just manufacturing, just get them out. And so that's different in kind than, let's say, designing a house to be beautiful, to be aesthetically beautiful.
Well, okay, so let's say you go out and you design a single aesthetically beautiful house, and then you press the copy button, effectively.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? The aesthetically beautiful house has a place.
Yeah.
It is defined by the place that it is in addition to the fact that it is a well-formed house. If you take Second Empire housing from the center of Paris and put it in this wide-open field, it'll look out of place. Because that style of building came over time to fit with the ever-changing and very strict regulations on how buildings could be constructed within downtown Paris. You put it out on the prairie, it's like, what's the point? It's too tall. Why do you made your attic an entire extra floor that you now have to heat in the middle of, rural Illinois. Why would you do that instead of building a single story ranch with maybe a basement? So, when it's negative 30 degrees, it doesn't make sense when you copy it and put it in a different location.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it clearly doesn't make utilitarian sense, but especially once you start putting them back to back to back to back, I don't know that I can point to a particular reason why it's wrong. I have a hypothesis, actually. But we kind of all seem to know that, uniform houses, even if you make them the one beautiful, you put 15 of them next to each other. Just
you
gotta have something to break it up.
You can use the same style, but that doesn't mean every house is identical. There's enough leeway within any style of housing of art that you don't need to make them identical, and you shouldn't.
Okay, so here's a slight theory. It also goes back to the fact that, or not the fact, but the theory that creation is sexual.
Nice.
And that
Coming full circle here.
Yes, sir. So when you have sexual reproduction, you get variance.
Yep.
You get little bits of chromosome A and little bits of chromosome B, and
sometimes your eyes really look like one parent, and then the next kid is a carbon copy, and
right. So like
your nose looks like this person. I don't know where the chin came from.
You get that variance, and if you start seeking to root out the variance, you get incestuous design.
Yeah.
Right? Like the story of it matches pretty well to what we see with creation when we start looking for turnkey. Well, I don't know about so much turnkey, but we want a hand crank that cranks out the same thing over and over again. We get tired of it. And, I think a lot of the reason does go back to the fact that we are organic. If you don't like the word sexual, we are organic beings. And the nature of organisms is they're affected by their surroundings. They take on different forms and they get warped and molded by what's around them. And so when we build systems that are, I don't think being infinitely scalable and infinitely copyable in and of itself is bad. But when you couple that with the fact that they're rigid too, i.e. not reconfigurable, like you have, when you create millions of black boxes.
One size fits all.
Yeah. It's a problem when you have millions of black boxes. It's not so much a problem when those black boxes are really teeny tiny and don't do too much. Like, okay, you got millions of Nokia phones out there. What do you use it for? Use it to call someone. It doesn't even make sense to have a reconfigurable Nokia phone, right?
Yeah, because...
Not too much.
No. Because nature or the observable world doesn't... There's no... In like nature and whatnot, there's no duplicating really in nature. And I'm honestly willing to put down money to say that even when you go down to like the atom level and whatnot, there's probably still differences that we just don't have the tools to observe yet.
Yeah, even asexual reproduction does have mutations.
Exactly, yeah. That's not something you see really in nature, duplication.
Yeah. But so you get something small like a Nokia phone, and like this has no need for reconfiguration. And even then, I guess, sure, you have a flip phone, you have a bar phone, you've got whatever. But once it starts to get more complicated, once it starts to take on more functionality, similar to, okay, you have an asexual single-cell organism, whatever, no big deal, who cares? But you have a multi-cell organism that starts to need to be sexual. It needs to have more mutation and more malleability to its surroundings. I mean, you actually get that malleability at least insofar as the fact that it's multi-celled. It's reconfigurable. It adapts to its surroundings at least a little bit. Maybe it doesn't fundamentally overhaul itself, but it's got knobs. You can tweak it and tune it a little bit. And so when we create technologies that we pump out tons of big black monolithic boxes, we hate them. We get really tired of them. And they're also they don't adapt themselves to the problems that we face.
Yeah, once Zeppelins were no longer the future of air transportation, there's no reason to build another skyscraper.
Wait,
the reason why skyscrapers were built is so you could dock with Zeppelins.
Seriously?
Yeah. That's why the Empire State Building was built.
I didn't know that.
Why do we still build skyscrapers then? Because they're cool, I guess.
Bragging rights.
Because one, we can. two,
Fair.
you can fit a lot of offices into the same, footprint.
Sure.
Because you keep building up.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
They're really expensive.
They're really expensive, and when the power goes out, everyone's dead above the 4th floor.
Yeah.
They're built for Zeppelins.
They were built for Zeppelins.
Okay, I really like the concept of Zeppelins.
So do I. But once you stop using them for air transportation, there's no reason to build another one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, though.
I really wish hydrogen wasn't flammable sometimes.
You can still use helium, I think.
Can you?
I really wish helium was more abundant and easy to produce then.
Yeah. Yeah, the hydrogen is more reactive, but also more common and lighter, I think. And then helium, you can also do it and inert.
Yes.
But clearly, as Thad was saying, the reason that wasn't the case with the Hindenburg is because it's harder.
It's very expensive. It's very expensive as welding gas. I can only imagine trying to fill a Zeppelin.
Fill a 10-ton Zeppelin with it, yeah. I'm just guessing on weight. I have no idea how much they actually weigh, but they're big.
Yes. That's fascinating about skyscrapers.
Oh yeah. Look the, World War I and up to before the Hindenburg. There are videos of people disembarking from Zeppelins.
We really never built skyscrapers before this?
You might have built some fairly large tower-like buildings, but never the attempt to get as tall as skyscrapers was driven for the need to dock with Zeppelins.
Huh.
It's probably like visual aesthetic first. Like here, this building is important because of how it looks, and also it does some important function and whatnot. I mean, technically with churches, right? You have the steeples that point to heaven. That's you're not docking on a Zeppelin, I don't think, at the top of the church.
Probably never.
I mean, I haven't seen one, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah, but yeah, that's probably exacerbated that reasoning. So
yeah, the steeple has a symbolic purpose,
right?
It does have a practical purpose too. Where's church? Where do I point to pray? Where do I,
right?
Yeah.
What's going on in town?
Ding dong is church time.
You can hear a bell easier, yeah.
Yeah. I guess, it makes the bell travel further, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because it's above the other. In theory, it's above the other buildings.
That's a good reason too.
So the sound doesn't get absorbed or blocked by them.
Yep.
Also, reasons why you'll find churches on hills.
Yes.
Does not explain why you find most churches in Europe built into the sides of other buildings.
You do?
Yeah, in Southern Europe, it's almost impossible to find a church that is freestanding.
Huh.
And in Northern Europe, the ones that you find were built over graveyards, and that's why they were freestanding, because that was where the holy ground already was.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
One beneficial reason of that is then you can spend all of your decoration money on less sides of the church. So the church is more beautiful from the side the people are actually going to be looking at it from.
Okay, so here's something Adam passed along. He wanted good old Catholic both and. The creative process of discovery frees man from the constraint of ignorance of what God has created, either in the discoveries of the natural world or in the novel creations of human invention which God has created through man, and it yokes man to the discovery that the natural end of all things leads us back to God, who is the one true creator.
Free from ignorance and yoked to the true creator.
Yeah. Because, creation as discovery is a really interesting thing that I like. Because it's, in a way it's very liberating, and it makes, it kind of, you have a boundary to what you're able to do once you start to realize that it's really just a discovery. That's actually something interesting I just realized. We call at the place I'm working at now, we call our concepting phase a discovery phase. So we actually we go out and we discover what are the key parameters, what are the things that actually are important to you. So anyways, it's discovery. I always like to joke with people that machining is nothing more than archaeology.
Because you're kind of digging it out of material. Yeah.
The part's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
You just gotta not break it.
Or it's the David and the marble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Painting is kind of the inverse of that, though. So it can often work both ways.
Painting is additive manufacturing.
Oh, yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of subtractive painting out there? That's not really a thing,
Sculpture, I guess. If you consider that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Painting in some sense, but
Would you call, I don't know, wood etching subtractive?
That would be subtractive.
Yeah.
That's actually an interesting one.
Carving.
Because
I think carving and whittling are what you're thinking of.
Well, also like etching, which I guess is still carving.
If you're
technically.
burning, it's also transformative.
That's
too.
exactly what I'm thinking of.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was
But
thinking
it does share
Adjacent. Yeah.
with subtractive processes in that you can't go back.
Yeah.
You can only burn more. You can't burn less. You can't
unburn, yeah.
Yeah.
The chemical change. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. That's interesting. So you get the dualism of the separation aspect of things. You can go in either direction there, where you keep on adding stuff until it's perfect, or you can subtract away stuff until it's perfect.
Kind of want to go back over Genesis and find out if all of those creation was detractive in that it was splitting things.
Well, it was
or
creation and then splitting.
Yeah.
Right.
Was any of it additive?
Well, I think once the living things started being created, I don't think anything was split necessarily.
True.
It was all placed in Eden at the start, which had boundaries, but...
Yep. So we create the heaven and the earth, which is now a formless wasteland.
I guess the creation of Eve was technically additive. Was it not?
I mean, women are in fact larger than a single rib. In case anyone was wondering.
Oh, really? The Lord God then built up into a woman the rib which he had taken from the man. I presume that it was actually, the same process by which Adam was formed. So, which is a taking existing clay and forming it. So you got a third form there. I guess there is actually a third, which is reshape and restructure in a way that is reversible. So you can produce things subtractively. You can produce things additively. I guess is forming clay a subset of additive?
I think transformative is a combination of the two. So for example, with pottery, the clay has to be taken from somewhere and then molded into something.
Yeah. Conservation of mass.
Yeah.
Let the water teem with an abundance of living creatures, and on earth let birds fly beneath the dome in the sky. And so it happened.
Yep.
So that's like out of nothing.
All the great sea monsters and all kinds of swimming creatures.
I like how the sea monsters are called out there. Like
good old Loch Ness.
Yeah. Bunch of whales just showing up and eating people.
Not people. We don't have people yet.
I mean, eventually. The people who were like passing this down and writing it down definitely were afraid for good reason.
We barely even understand our own ocean now.
Yeah. Imagine back then. Just some dark mass under the water destroys your boat and just keeps going.
Yeah. That would freak me out. It's why maps in like medieval times, they had like dragons and serpents.
Well, yeah, because it's a work of art. And there are dangerous things out there.
Yeah. So
might as well let people know. 2 birds with 1 stone. Right, Kevin? If you're gonna use all this time and ink and paper, that all of which are expensive, you might as well pretty it up a bit.
That feels like going back to the novel discussion. About trying to tell or pass on morals, let's say, in a poetic or creative way.
If we are designed to participate in God's creation, what then happens when we are no longer have access to a creative outlet? Here's why I say this. A lot of the services and whatnot that we experience nowadays sometimes thwart the drive for creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you no longer pursue a creative outlet? If everything's being given to you.
When you simply consume.
Bingo.
Yeah. Or even when you get surrogate creation too. I think internet comments are a great form of surrogate creation.
Internet comments.
Good. I like that.
I really do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're pretty good, but most of the time
They're just bad.
They're
so bad.
I can't remember the last time I've commented on something.
I don't. It's a general rule.
I just, this isn't worth my time. If I want to actually tell you something, I'm going to go out and tell you something.
Yeah.
Like, I want to engage in high quality creation, and it's an expenditure of energy that's kind of it's lower, and I don't need to do it. Right?
Yeah.
I do really think that we've really lost the sense in which it's important to work with one's hands.
Yes.
By and large, we do not understand that anymore. Actually, I think a lot of us will give lip service to that, but then turn around and like, oh, well, such is life. We live in the 21st century. Let me just order it on Amazon.
Right. Yeah. A lot of, going off that point, that a lot of people that I know that work in the coding or computer science industry, I find that a lot of their hobbies fall into the categories of like camping, or board games isn't that good of an example, but it falls in that category where they're all activities that are analog in nature. So either like doing music, or they like painting is a good one, where there is a sort of balance in that the lack of, for lack of a better term, quality in what they do for a living is then balanced out by their hobbies, which might allow them to do said things. Not everyone I've met has this, but I know that is a trend that I have seen, and it might not just be computers, but
when you talk about having an analog hobby and a digital profession, pretty much everyone that I met when I was doing historical European martial arts was an engineer.
Interesting.
In some way. Some of them also use that to make things for the hobby, but not all of them. But all of them came together and hit each other with swords.
Man, a lot of, even some of the people in our like prayer groups and whatnot are also a lot of STEM people, now that I think about it.
Well, we have all of us.
That's true.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Yeah, it's very important to maintain your birthright, really, as sons and daughters of the King, as sub-creators, as people who were called to work in the garden from the get-go, before the fall.
Creativity is a form of prayer, ora et labora.
Yeah.
True.
There is a great resurgence of, people being creators on media platforms. I think that's a huge thing. More so than you would historically, maybe. I'm not sure about that, honestly.
I would say no.
Okay.
And the reason I would say no is because folk songs.
I was just about to think that, like, think about that through for a second, that you don't have local theaters anymore.
You don't have local theaters, and even before local theaters, you just had local people making up silly songs together.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those,
you have to post it on TikTok.
Some of those are even recorded.
True.
Some of those are even recorded. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's actually very true. Like, how much have we just lost to, they died.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
Didn't even get written down.
Because it's just, rather than 4 people in a room talking about creativity, is 4 people out on the farm waiting for something to happen and just, singing a tune.
Pass the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
That must be why it's so hard for me to find someone to do a jam session with. Because everyone's doing covers.
I mean, That's how you get noticed first, better or for worse.
Yeah, so that's related also to kind of the general state of modernity. I ran across this interesting idea, which I think is pretty spot on, which is that historically you have an abundance of attention and a shortage of information. Fast forward to today, and you have a shortage of attention and abundance of information. And so instead of you competing for information, now all of a sudden the information is competing for your attention.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
And so if there's just so much information that's widely available, why be creative?
Yep.
Like, there's so much out there that's ready-made. Why do you want something else?
It's almost as if you're deterred from being creative because someone else has probably already done it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say because someone else probably already done it. It's because you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
So easily. Whether if it's music, well, you can listen to any genre of music from the past, 600 years without putting much effort into it, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
And so that satisfies the need for something for some different kind of music. So you never need it enough to create your own.
I've actually personally experienced this before. When I was in grade school and high school, I have two good friends of mine. They're twins. I've known them for 15 plus years now. One of our pastimes is we would like to design board games because that happened to be a thing we all enjoyed, but we liked making them and coming up with ideas for them and then trying to produce them and play with other friends and get them to join in. So there was a time where we were trying to make a card game. And what ended up happening is that very quickly, once we realized that the card game we were designing already existed, it almost on a dime turned to us playing that game, and we dropped the product altogether.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It actually happened several times. I think there's only been one, maybe two projects that we actually hit a prototype or an end goal.
Really?
Even. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a classic scenario of you start a project, you have 15 unfinished projects because you never actually finished them because either you can get the thing already or, you can get the thing already.
Right.
Or it already exists.
Yeah, I run into that quite a lot with hobby stuff. But simultaneously, what it often can come down to is, you want to go through the entire creative process anew because you want something particular.
Right.
Got to be just so, has to fit. I guess, there could be two reasons why probably more. Two reasons why you go through a creative process. One is because you want perfect fit and finish. You just need it tailored. Just needs to be just right. Right. Yeah. In engineering terms, word we might use is turnkey, right? We got these guys who build this product and it needs to be configured. They go through this configurator. You just turn the key. It's technically bespoke. It's technically creative, but we knew how to do it from the get-go. And the other is the innovative. So we're building something no one's ever seen before, as far as we can tell.
Right.
And there can be a little bit of a distinction between the two, but those are the two reasons why you want to go through something. Now, the turnkey, right? If that's something that's already existed, there's a greater tendency to see once you've realized, oh, this already exists out there, let me just do it cheaper. The only reason why you'd be incentivized to go through it is because for some reason you think you can do it cheaper, but economies of scale being as they are, probably not the case. Or because you really, really, really care about the actual craft. That can be a reason to actually go through the entire process anew.
It's almost like the wall between moving forward with the creative process and you not doing that due to justifying that something else works, or I guess in a lack of a better word, slothfulness, I guess. It's like, oh, the work I put into it is not worth me bringing the idea all the way to fruition. If someone has something just close enough to what I'm looking for, that it's just easier to not participate in their creativity.
Yep. You just say, screw it.
Right.
Yeah, because in our society where we can transport things over very large distances and create economies of scale, we can start to lose certain crafts from local areas. I mean, we all know this is the case with the U.S. You literally can't make an iPhone in the U.S. It's basically impossible. So because you stop valuing the actual creative process for itself, and because you forsake your heritage as sons and daughters of the King, then you're going to run into problems down the road as you've forgotten how to do the creative arts. And then especially once you start, pigeonholing yourself to what is America? What do we create? What do we do creatively?
Right.
Media is kind of the big thing.
And even then, the only big media house is Hollywood.
Yeah, I think there's sort of an interesting thing that's happened there. We're going to delve into that a lot more in our next episode because we have a very exciting interview coming up soon. So yeah, we'll be talking about media next time on our next episode, where we're going to have a very exciting interview. Looking forward to that with a very special guest on the next episode of Machinae Ex Deo.